Penguin Random House Canada presents The Scientist and the Psychic, A Son's Exploration of His Mother's Gift, by Christian Smith, Ph.D. Read for you by Douglas E. Hughes. For Pauline Martin, my loving grandmother, who lives on in these pages and in my heart. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. Albert Einstein. Introduction. I'm disappointed we don't have any ghosts, I said to my mother. We were sitting in the living room of my new home having coffee when I decided to have some fun with her. I wouldn't say that, she replied. Really? Why? I see a young lady with dark hair, carrying a baby, coming down the stairs. Over there. She pointed to the narrow staircase directly opposite to where she was sitting. I turned to look. Nothing. The darkened staircase was certainly fit for a ghost story. The vaulted ceilings made it difficult to reach the occasional cobweb, and the dark chestnut wooden stairs were prone to creaking even when no one was there. I'd assumed it was the typical sounds of an old house settling. My entire home was cold and drafty, and on windy days it sounded like someone was whistling on the upper floor. All were explainable, but later, when I'd hear the stairs creak, I would think of the woman and her baby. I've seen her a couple of times since we came in, but I lose her about halfway down the stairs, Mum said. Her statements didn't alarm me. Growing up with a famous psychic mother, I frequently heard comments others would probably consider bizarre. My mother, Geraldine Stringer, formerly Smith, and my grandmother, Nanny Pauline, were visiting me for the first time since I'd moved into a townhouse in downtown Toronto. Several months earlier, in October 2014, my mother had fallen and broken her leg. After surgery, prolonged hospitalization, and physiotherapy, she was finally able to climb the stairs to my front door. I gave a brief tour, and we relaxed on retro furnishings in the cathedral-sized living room. My mother was 65, but could easily be mistaken for 75, an unfortunate side effect of overindulgence and excessive partying in her youth. The auburn tresses that used to reach her shoulders had thinned to short, uneven wisps, resembling a baby's head of hair. Her once round, smooth face was now heavily wrinkled from years of living under the intense California sun. She was a shadow of her former self, but while her body had weakened, her eyes danced with warmth and vitality. Nanny Pauline sat next to her on the burnt-orange upholstered couch. She was a month away from 90, yet moved like a soldier marching to battle. Her curved spine caused her to hunch forward, but failed to slow her. She chuckled as my mother described the ghost on the stairs, fully aware of my skepticism. I told them what I knew about the sale history of the house. Our realtor sent us a history of the place dating back to the 1950s. The Catholic Church owned the property back then, I said. Oh, before then, interrupted my mother. I would say 80 to 90 years ago. If she was right, the woman and baby would have lived in the house between 1925 and 1935. How do you know? I asked. Just a guess, judging by the clothing. The baby is wearing an old-fashioned white lace christening gown. Mum speculated it was a Sunday, mother and child dressed up for a christening ceremony. My Victorian-era townhome was nestled on a quiet, tree-lined one-way street and proudly displayed a heritage sign declaring its construction in 1890. The outside of the home looked neglected, and when my partner Dag and I first came for a viewing, we were hesitant to enter. Paint chipped away from the stucco-plastered facade, slimy, decaying leaves covered the narrow wooden stairs, and the handrail rocked unsteadily. But when we crossed the threshold, we saw the interior was renovated to perfection, and instantly knew we were home. I was curious if there was historical evidence to back up Mum's claim. I wondered how I could check property ownership, and if century-old records were available in the city archives. If I found a name, would there be a living relative to contact? If the relatives had pictures of the mystery woman, I imagined assembling them with an array of similar photos to see if my mother could identify her. A photographic lineup of ghosts. I didn't realize it then, But these small questions would raise even bigger ones about my mother, and spark my investigation of the pivotal paranormal events that have shaped her life and mine. Growing up, I was often asked, "What's it like to have a psychic mom?" When I was quite small, I didn't know anything different and assumed everyone's family was like mine. My mother frequently spoke of spirits and hosted séances. Our family friends were mediums who communicated with the afterlife, astrologers who read the future from star charts, and clairvoyants who bent spoons with their minds. It wasn't until 5th grade that I realized my mother was unlike other parents, yet I didn't quite understand what made her different. Mom and Dad had separated when I was 5, and both agreed I should live with my mother when my father decided to move 2,500 miles away to Vancouver to be near his sister and parents. We lived in a rural area west of Toronto, and unknown to me at the time, the local newspapers had chronicled my mother's rise to fame, making her a target of ridicule amongst the other parents and teachers at my school. Kids chased and taunted me during recess, yelling, "Your mom is a witch!" Strangers understood more about my mother's profession than I did. As her fame grew and business flourished, Mom frequently traveled across the country doing psychic readings and seminars. When her trips became longer and more frequent, I stayed with my grandmother, once for several months when my mother went to Los Angeles to hobnob with celebrities. Later, Nanny would tell me I was the son she never had. Occasionally, when my school schedule allowed, I took a flight to see Mom in whatever major city she was working in at the time. At the airport, my name became synonymous with unaccompanied minor. I was led onto the plane by a flight attendant and then escorted off after everyone else had deplaned. It didn't help that I was a nervous passenger and believed plane crashes happened as frequently as I saw in the movies. The night before a trip, I'd call Mom and ask if my flight would be okay, and every time she would reply, "I see you landing safely." Today, I realize her 100% prediction accuracy was no great feat. The odds of dying in an airplane crash are 1 in 11 million, after all. But back then, I boarded planes with confidence and felt I knew a secret the other passengers didn't. My interest in science was born on those trips with my mother. By age 8 or 9, I had earned the nickname Dr. Christian because of my collection of medical books. I was probably the only 9-year-old with a worn copy of Gray's Anatomy. Despite my presence, Geraldine continued her busy schedule, often working into the night. Television talk shows, radio interviews, private psychic readings, and teaching seminars consumed her days. Meanwhile, I camped out nearby, always with my trusty briefcase filled with medical books and science fiction magazines. I was deeply fascinated by science fiction, an obsession I owed to my father. He was the silent, sensitive type, and was just as likely to be seen reading fantasy or science fiction as watching a hockey game. He liked to paint, write poetry, and discuss philosophy and spirituality. When I was 8, he took me to see Star Wars, and I still remember the thrill of watching the bizarre assortment of aliens come to life on screen. Around the same time, he bought me the medical book, the Anatomy Coloring Book. I was intrigued by the inner workings of the human body, and when I was 11, I merged my two passions by handwriting my first book, The Galactic Adventures of Dr. Friendship. In the story, Dr. Friendship roams the universe in a giant hospital spacecraft, responding to galactic conflicts and providing emergency treatment to diverse alien species. Nowadays, I would pitch it as Star Trek meets ER. My central character, Dr. Friendship, was aptly named. He became my close companion for many lonely years. Whenever my mother was busy with a client, I would pop open my briefcase and fill my time by writing or looking through my medical books for the different surgeries I wanted Dr. Friendship to perform. When Dag and I were packing to move into the townhouse, I was surprised to find the manuscript had survived almost 4 decades in storage. I thumbed through the yellowed pages and landed on a crude illustration of a dragon-like alien undergoing spinal surgery. The exposed spinal column was twice as long as a human spine and filled with multicolored nerve bundles. It looked like Dr. Friendship was defusing a bomb rather than performing surgery. Looking back at the meticulously detailed pictures I drew when I was 11, it's easy to recognize my burgeoning desire to become a scientist. As a teenager, I wanted to be a doctor or veterinarian. It wasn't until I enrolled in a university genetics course that I discovered what scientists do in research laboratories and decided I'd become a cancer biologist.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?